Hello everyone, we are live on air with Live on Air, and welcome back to another Philosophy Thoughts episode with me, Olivia Calladine-Smith, your host. I'm a university student at the University of Bristol studying philosophy and French, and I have a passion for philosophical debate and meaningful current discussions. Now, I want to show you how you can use philosophy to tackle your everyday life problems as well as other ethical dilemmas. We will be going from discussions on social media, AI and other current affairs to crime, relationships and tips for success and growth. Live on Air is a safe space where you can contribute your controversial and uncomfortable questions so that I can discuss them and tackle them with you all. And for the students out there, you will also be gaining exclusive tips and advice to academic success. I cannot wait to discuss with you all in this judgment-free zone. You can expect to start thinking like a true philosopher. You're watching Live on Air. Wow, guys, it is really hot in here. I am slightly sweating, as you can see. It's currently 30 degrees and yeah, we are certainly going through this summer heat wave, but we are in the studio and as you can see, I have got a different setup. We are going to be delving into a very different topic today. We're going to be talking about 5 key rules that you need to implement into your life if you want to achieve your goals. Now, even though I'm only 19, I have to say that I am very privileged to have, had so many experiences so far in my life. And when I sit down and I reflect on them, because it's really good to think about your experiences, what you learned from them, what you could do better, because I have a very, very long road ahead of me. And when I think about a lot of my experiences, I think to myself that I always upheld these 5 key rules. And I think they're essential for you guys. Some of them may be something that you hear a lot, cliche, and some of them you might not really have thought of as much. But just these 5 key rules, if you can just put that up in your room on a piece of paper and just remind yourself every day of these things, whether you're trying to, start a new hobby, you're trying to open up a new business, you're striving for academic success, you want to create a new brand, whatever it is, these 5 rules are essential and they can be applied to anything. Okay, so the 5 key rules that I'm going to be going through are consistency. I've got my iPad here with all of them noted down, so that's why I'm looking up and down. We've got being able to say no, accepting failures and actively learning from them, confidence in your own ideas. Love that one, confidence in your own ideas. I can't wait to expand on that. And last but not least, leading from discipline, not motivation. I can't emphasize enough how important these 5 rules are to being able to achieve your goals. If you even just drop one of them, I'm not saying you can't reach your goals, but it will be a lot harder to get there. Whatever goal you have in mind right now, if you want to reach that goal, please do these 5 things as much as possible. As humans, we are not perfect. We know that. It's going to be difficult. Myself, I found it difficult with some of my goals to be consistent, to learn to say no sometimes, to accept some of my failures. These are all things that I have also struggled to do. But when I have been successful, I have done these 5 things. So I know they work and I want to share them with you guys. Consistency. So consistency, well, I think is self-explanatory. Consistency is when you repeatedly do a similar or the same action over and over and over again until, well, hopefully you reach your goal. So a prime example we can use is in the gym. Multiple times I've wanted to really get really in there with the gym, and I'm sure so many people watching have been like, I want to get on my gym grind, and then it hits. You're not seeing the results that you want, or you're not seeing results as quickly as you want, and it gets difficult. But even if you look at the people who have achieved their physiques, or they've achieved the confidence that they want in the gym, or I'm using the gym as an example, but you can use other examples. But if you look at those people, they have consistently showed up in the gym. I can guarantee you they have consistently showed up in the gym for a long time, for a good, a year, a long period of time. We're not talking a week, 2 weeks. We're talking a long period of time to really transform their physiques. Now, that would be a personal goal to achieve a physique that you want in the gym, but there's also loads of other things that you can do. Some of you watching may be in school or A levels or university, and you want to achieve a certain grade. You can't just do one like one day of everything and then just expect to jump from a really rubbish grade to a really great grade. Now, you can nevertheless jump grades. I've done it before in a short space of time, but I can guarantee you that you can't go from 0 to just doing loads in one day and then just get what you want. There has to be some level of consistency, whether it means one week you're on a low and you might do a little bit less, and then another week you're going all guns blazing. So you might be putting in 40% at one point, and then you might be putting 80% at one point, but nevertheless, you have never stopped. You've never got to 0%. So I think this is really, really important. Even if you have those off days, you don't feel well, you don't really feel as motivated as normal, seasonal depression kicks in, whatever it is, just don't ever let yourself drop to 0. Always put in some sort of effort, and you will always be, on that route to getting what you want. And I think the hardest part is, if we use the example of the gym, physically, it's a really good example because your body kind of switches off when you physically just stay still. And for some reason, when you go back to the gym, even if you've been doing it for a couple of weeks, you stop for a week or two, you go back, and for some reason it's so much harder than it was to begin with. So the key is just don't stop. Don't take massive pauses. You are what you repeatedly do. This is what Aristotle said. And I think it's really interesting actually, because like a lot of social media nowadays normalizes like just putting out the big reward or the big day of getting your degree or just the end goal. And we never actually see people behind the scenes doing the small repeated actions consistently to getting to that big result. And I think it creates this like mindset of when people coming to wanting to reach their own goals and they're looking especially at social media, they're thinking, oh, this has to happen overnight. But it doesn't happen overnight. And it is people being consistent. So that is my number one. Okay, so number 2, we're going to be talking about learning to say no. Now, I could do a whole episode on this. This is so important. I'll tell you why. I don't think everybody that, tries to say yes to people or tries to say yes to everything around them and not themselves, I don't think they're necessarily a people pleaser. I don't think this is a reason to bring yourself down. But I think sometimes as humans, we can be overly ambitious as well. Try to be there and spread ourselves like thinly. And sometimes it's learning to say no to one thing to be able to open the door for another. And this doesn't necessarily have to be people. This can be yourself. You could be wanting to, have a nap, but you have to learn to say no sometimes. No, I'm not going to do this. If I want this, I'm not going to do this. You have to say no to a donut. You walk past, I don't know, like a donut or churros truck. I'm thinking of churros because I really, really like churros and I could really do with having some right now. There's so many things that are so tantalizing and you want to indulge in, but sometimes you have to say no. You walk past and you just have to say no to yourself. It's also really important to say no to others. I think it's very nice to be compassionate. It's very nice to be there for people, but sometimes you really do have to stand your ground. If there is any big goal that you want to achieve, whether that's your A-levels, your GCSEs, there's going to be times where your friends are going to say, let's go out, let's have a break, let's do this, let's do that. You might have your parents say, can you come to this event with the family? Or your parents might even say, let's go on a holiday. And you have to sometimes say no. I mean, I remember doing this during my GCSEs and A-levels. I missed out on 2 holidays with my entire family. Went to Jamaica. Yes, Jamaica. Lovely hot sun, beautiful beaches, amazing vibes. I would have loved to be there, but I knew exactly what I wanted. And I know that might sound drastic, but sometimes you have to say no in order to get what you want. And you have to look at the long-term benefits. And, those decisions were never easy for me, but do I regret them? No. Learning to say no actually really made me realize how disciplined I can be. And, when I got what I wanted in the end, it was all worth it. So I think, learning to say no to things like that, or even just like I said, friends wanting to go places or even just revise together. During my A-levels, a lot of people were going places to revise, cafes, or they were even in school in the library. And it's not to say to be completely and utterly isolated, but you need to know what's best for you. And if you know that you can't study around your friends because you won't be able to concentrate, then sometimes you just have to say no. And your friends shouldn't take that by offense. Like my friends at A-levels, when I said I wasn't going to study in the library with them, or I wasn't going to chill at lunchtime, a lot of the time I would just go straight up to the library or the support room, like the quiet room, so I could just study. And they didn't take offense because they knew that I was just putting myself first. So, the right people will understand that you also have to say no to be able to put yourself first. And everyone has to put themselves first at the end of the day. And yeah, I think it's good to have a balance. I mean, everything within moderation. You should always try and take a break, make some time for some friends, make some time for, watching a movie or having an ice cream, going for a walk. These are all things that you have to do when you're in and amongst, reaching goals. It can be very exhausting, exerting energy and force into your goals 100% of the time. You're going to get burnout. So obviously you can't constantly be chasing after your goals, but what I mean is when necessary, you do need to know to say no. And especially intuitively, if I kind of want to say no, and put yourself first, and have no shame doing that, have no guilt, because that's how you're going to get to where you want to be. I think if you look at the bigger picture, every no that you're saying yes to your peace, you're saying yes to your future, you're saying yes to your success. And even though these distractions that come in might be, something that you desire or you kind of want to do, they are distractions nevertheless. And a lot of them will try and deter you off your goals. So you have to be able to draw the line between your future self, getting what you want in the future, and, making your future self proud, and being, available. You can't always be there for people, and, because ultimately you will not be there for yourself, and you don't want to lose yourself trying to say yes to everything and say yes to everyone. You can't please everyone. You're not going to please everyone, and don't feel bad about it. And, there's going to be some people who say you're selfish. I'm sure there is, but you have to do what you have to do. And like I said, do it within moderation and use your intuition. When it's right and when it's wrong. Like, for example, if your friend is in need of serious help and you're kind of revising, I'm sure you could change your revision schedule so that you could help that friend in need. So it's not about saying no to everything and, becoming very stoic and being that person who is selfish and never has time for people. No, of course not. But I think you guys can kind of understand where I'm coming from with that. There's a difference between selfish and putting yourself first. So just try and distinguish between the two. We're going to be going on to the third rule that I use to reach my goals. Now, come on, we're all guilty of this. We do blame ourselves when we fail. It's not the easiest accepting failures, especially if you have high expectations for yourself or you expected something to go differently. But what you have to learn is, in your life, there's going to be so many goals that you try to reach, and sometimes they just don't happen. And for multiple reasons, they do say rejection is redirection. And I truly believe in this. Sometimes things don't work out and it opens another door. And this can go for so many things, actually. For example, not getting a job. You might apply to 100, 200 jobs and you might not get 99% of them, but just one of them you will get. And sometimes it's just leading you to a different experience, or making you more resilient along the way, or teaching you something within the process. And sometimes things are just not for you, and that's okay. And you can still learn from all of these experiences and reach your goal in the end. Not sometimes, most of the time, it's not going to be linear. If you do get there straight away, it's probably just luck. But most people, you'll hear their stories. It's never easy. One thing I think of when I talk about this is authors. I think a lot of the time, you'll see loads of authors, they'll write books over and over and over again, and they will try and publish so many, and they won't be successful, or they'll be turned down. I think there was an example of someone who wrote a book about 40 times before they could actually get it published. And can you think about every single time that they did that, they would have been doubting themselves, like, I failed, and they could have seen themselves as a failure by the third, the fifth time, but they didn't. They kept going. And you'll see loads of people, singers, dancers, actors. I'm an example of that. I failed loads of auditions. I never saw myself as a failure. I knew, a lot of the time you have to be aware of the industry that you're trying to kind of pursue, or the goal you're trying to pursue. And especially with like acting, for example, most of the time you're going up against thousands or hundreds of other people, and it's very, very difficult. And a lot of the time you're going to hear that no, but it doesn't make you a failure. It just means you need to learn from it and, just do better or do something differently the next time. One day you will reach your goal. So, even if your brand isn't taking off, or your business isn't taking off, or your academics aren't where you want them to be, just know that when you do fail, that you can come back from that and you can learn from that. I even remember when I was in year 12, I got an E in like one of my first essays for RS, and I was so gutted. I left the room and I was just crying. And it's crazy to think, less than 2 years later, or a year and a half later, that I came out with an A star. And I would have never thought that. But I remember the teacher saying to me, this is not the end. This is literally the beginning. You're just learning how it goes and you will get there. So it just puts into perspective, when that did happen to me, I kind of had to change my mindset. I had to say to myself, well, this is not the end. I have so much time to improve this, and I'm going to improve this. You either, sit with your failures and be a failure by just not trying again, or you try again and you get there in the end. And remember, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If you don't take the chance, you don't know if you could have ever won or failed. So failure is just a sign that you're trying. And this happened again with my whole experience applying to Oxford University. Even though I didn't get in the end, I did my best and I got through so many different rounds to get to that last, 30% of people out of the 40,000 people that were applying. And I got to the interview process. And if I had never tried, I would have thought to myself, oh, what if I got in? And I would sit with the regret of what if. So I think what you have to remember is when you fail, if you give up, you always sit with a regret. Whereas if you continue and you know that you put your 100% all in and it didn't go your way, that rejection will redirect you to something better. And if you fix your mindset in that way, you will never fail. You will always reach your goals. So just keep going. I think moral of the story is just don't see your failures in a negative light. Okay, so we're going to be moving on to the fourth rule. And this one is something that I really, really stand by. And that is confidence in your own vision. Now, I don't need to be go into too much depth on this. This is really self-explanatory. Have confidence in yourself. Your ideas are not going to make sense to other people. Your vision is not always going to make sense to other people. Sometimes you have that gift, that spark of just being creative or being good at something that other people aren't good at. Not everyone sees the world the way that you see it, and you have to remember that. This one was really big for me when I started my podcast, because I had a few people say, like, what is the point of doing that? And, people that essentially weren't really supportive of my idea. And at the end of the day, I have a vision for this podcast more than my viewers will even know right now how much I have, and that the vision I have for this whole thing, which I won't go into because it's my vision, and I know that I can appreciate my vision. Not everyone will appreciate my vision. So it's just about just carrying it out confidently, and it's not about proving people wrong, but just carrying it out confidently and knowing that you will reach your goals in the end. And your goals is not somebody else's goals. So don't think your goals have to match somebody else's goals, or your vision has to match somebody else's vision. It doesn't. Some of the greatest people, who had the best ideas, they were turned down by other people. People didn't support them. And now they're some of the richest people. If it wasn't for the people having the confidence who invented so many things in this world, they would have been the first person to come up with certain things, a fan, a car, a aeroplane. All of these things that were invented were initially something that no one had thought of. And those people had to have the confidence to, actually explore those ideas and that vision that they had. And ultimately, there's so many people that have succeeded in so many different creating so many different things. So just know that you have the power to create, you have the power to be successful, and you just have to have confidence. If you don't have confidence in yourself, then, that is more than 50% of it. No one's saying that you have to be cocky or you're definitely going to get it right. But if you have confidence in your own vision, you can never really go wrong, because you're not trying to kind of validate other people's opinions. You're just being yourself. And ultimately, authenticity is the most important thing. You can only be yourself. That's the best way to be successful. Just be yourself. And again, this links to an idea that I've brought up in my other previous episodes. Existentialism, a philosopher talked about this called satire. And he talked about, life being something, you create the meaning of life. Meaning is not already created when you come here. So you create what success means to you. You create what meaning you attach to things. You are very free to create your own vision and have your own idea of success. Okay, so we're going to be moving on to the fifth and final rule that I think is so crucial to reaching your goals. And we've heard it before, it's shared a lot on social media, and that is putting discipline over motivation. But I can't emphasize this enough. I know it sounds cliche, but a lot of people just lead by their emotion. When they feel motivated to do something, they will do it. Sometimes you have to learn in life that there's going to be days where you feel low. There's going to be days where you don't feel motivated. And those are the days you still have to stand up and keep going. Those are the days that make you or break you, essentially. You have to lead by discipline. You have to do things because you want to reach something, not because you feel like doing it. There's going to be so many days where you feel like giving up. And it's the discipline, knowing that, okay, if I want to reach X, I have to do Y, and just doing it. And not leading by whether you actually feel up for it, because a lot of the time you won't. We are biologically, we are not made to reach goals. I've said, this was something I spoke about with a psychologist in France in one of my episodes, if you want to check that out. Found it so fascinating. He was talking all about how as biological creatures, we are not built, our minds are not built to reaching actual goals. This is a social construct. This life is a social construct. At the end of the day, we are creatures who just have to survive, and we just want to eat, sleep, breathe, drink water. There's just a handful of things that we actually need to survive. But there are so many other things that have been implemented in today's world, and we have to also kind of cater to that, even though our minds are not there yet. So just remembering that you will have a tendency to just do the things that allow you to survive, which is to sleep, which is to eat, and you want to do that all the time. Not to go to the gym and create a new business and go to work. So it's just being really aware that you are a biological creature, and you will have your tendencies, and you can't be blamed for that. It's good to accept that and acknowledge it. But once you're aware of that, you can then choose to be better. You can choose to be more disciplined and not lead by your emotions and your biology, and just lead by rationalize everything that's happening and say, okay, look, I want to reach my goals. You can't lead by your motivation, because you will not be successful. You have to be disciplined, and discipline is the only way you can get your results. And I've used this in when I first started football. I didn't feel motivated sometimes. I would wake up and quite frankly, I didn't even want to get out of bed for the rest of the day. But I knew that I wanted to reach a certain point in football, and I knew what goals I had for myself, and I just wanted to learn and I wanted to improve. So I had to make that choice. Okay, I have to be disciplined today. I have to get up. I have to go to football training. Well, I don't have to. You don't have to do anything. Sometimes you can take days off, and I did that too. But you can't take a day off every single day. Like I said, it goes back to consistency. You have to be consistent, and you have to maintain some level of consistency. You can't ever just, gear down to zero. You have to be inputting some sort of energy. So yeah, that is pretty much it for today. I have gone over the 5 key rules that I think is very essential and crucial to reaching your goals. I can assure you, if you can just follow these 5, that you will see a massive change in your progress, and you will find reaching your goals a lot easier, and it will come a lot more quickly, a lot more naturally, if you just implement these basic things and just always have that goal in mind. Just have a why. It's really important to know why you're doing something and your purpose, and having a why behind everything can always give you that extra drive and that extra push. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Something very different, but also comment down below if you'd like to see more things like this. Be sure to follow me on my other social media platforms. They will be in my description box below. And remember, you can also find me on Spotify at LivOnAir, where you can also find the audio versions to my podcast. But that is everything for today. That is Olivia Caroline Smith, your host. Bye for now.